before me. You know, Sydney and Denzel and you know, Halle Berry and Forrest and all those actors who graced the stage and not looking for awards and not looking for acknowledgement. They're artists. They want to do the work, you know.
Best Actress went to Irish actor Jessie Buckley for playing the wife of William Shakespeare, Agnes Hathaway, in Hamnet. One Battle also took home the award for Best Supporting Actor in Sean Penn, who was absent and frequently skips movie industry award shows. Best Animated Feature went to K-pop Demon Hunters, which also took the original song prize for Golden. It caps a record-breaking run after director Maggie Kang's movie became Netflix's most watched film ever on its 2025 debut.
Just feel immensely proud and really, to be honest, because I didn't want to disappoint Korea.
The show also took on a somber tone. Bosses of two big figures in the world of film, directors Robert Redford and Rob Reiner. Billy Crystal, star of When Harry Met Sally, said Reiner's films would last for lifetimes. The glitzy celebration, Hollywood's most over-the-top gala of the year, took place as the U.S. wages war on Iran. Security was tight in
The mood is that potentially there could be some diplomacy, but they're not seeing it materialize. Indeed, what I'm hearing here is that the message they're getting from Iran is that the price for a diplomatic off-ramp to unblock the Straits of Hormuz is too high a price to pay. Unclear what that is at the moment, but diplomacy really taking a sideline to the talk with Iran's weapons that's going on here right now.
Berlin local officials, they have been welcoming the arrival of spring in floral fashion. The German capital's famous memorial church, it was transformed into a pick-your-own tulip garden. Officials say the event was devised to symbolize the leaving behind of darkness, certainly badly needed these days. Has been hot with the soil.
A celebration of spring in Berlin.
There's been a bitter war between her and Emmanuel Grégoire. She vowed that there will never be a socialist mayor in Paris. He said, this is something I will never forget. She said she was awaiting Emmanuel Grégoire to call her. The big question is whether he will make an alliance with her or not, or stay the course and say, you know, I'll take my risk and decide not to align myself because that's what I promised, and eventually be able to win. So this is what's currently being negotiated, but it's a rather unusual scenery we have in Paris. You have essentially the two old heavyweight parties, the right and the left, facing off, and one will be elected. This is unlike what we've seen politically in the rest of France.
And also, unlike, as you said, what we have seen across the rest of France, very briefly, how does that compare to what's happening in Paris?
Well, there's a lot of fragmentation. We've seen it in the parliament. There's no majority in this country whatsoever. So you have a big fragmentation. This is why it's very difficult to draw a lesson from those municipal elections for the forthcoming presidential election. Yes, the national rally is performing well, but not in large towns. Yes, Frankenbau is performing well in peripheral areas of large towns, but not in rural areas. And yes, the socialists might hold on to Paris. They might be able to win and hold on to Marseille, and even maybe Lyon, a green leftist candidate, but they're still weak. And the Républicains, the conservative side, they are performing honorably, I would say, in small towns and so on, but not. Actually, they're very weak. So it's really a very. Very fragmented political scene that we're witnessing, including for the
British woman to win Best Actress for her role in Hamlet.
I was a part of the French 75.
A film about left-wing radicals and rebels was a big winner of this year's Oscars. One battle after another stars Leonardo DiCaprio as an ex-revolutionary searching for his teenage daughter. The comedy drama secured 6 statues, including Best Picture and Best Director for Paul Thomas Anderson.
Thank you very, very, very much.
A lot of little girls that look like me will sleep really well tonight because they'll want to become cinematographers. And I know that, you know, I'm here, so.
Best Actress went to favourite Jessie Buckley for her role playing grieving mother Agnes in Hamlet, a film about Shakespeare's family.
It's Mother's Day in the UK today, so I would like to dedicate this to the beautiful chaos of a mother's heart.
And the loss of several Hollywood legends was marked, including actors Diane Keaton, Catherine O'Hara, and Robert Redford. Stars of Rob Reiner's films took to the stage to honour the director of classics like When Harry Met Sally and The Princess Bride.
Today's Focus Report takes us to California, where the landmark trial against Google and Facebook is coming to an end. And at the heart of the case, repeated accusations that online platforms deliberately fuel social media addiction, especially among younger users. The ruling could set a new legal precedent
He knew perfectly well what was going on. The intention of the company was to prey on teens, use teens' usage, exploit them so they can make greater profits.
Every day for the past 2 months, grieving parents have taken turns showing up in support of the plaintiff. Their own children are no longer here to describe their online nightmare, like addiction to social media or extortion. Lori's daughter took her own life in 2020. She was just 18.
We want the truth, and we want the world to know the truth. And being here in court and telling our kids' stories and him being in there opens up a world where parents really realize that there is concern with the social media use and that it's an addiction and the design tactics they use. I think that's a win, and I'll take that.
Among the parents is Mary Rohde, who traveled from the state of New York. Her son Riley was 15 when he took his own life.
Riley was the life of the party, so fun, so impulsive, always my child that was hiding around the corner to give me a little scare.
On March 30th, 2021, everything happened in a matter of hours after Riley received a Facebook friend request from a young girl.
He accepts the friend request, goes into the Facebook Messenger where he's communicating with Megan Miller, and it's very flirty and fun, like, you're cute too.
But behind Megan's fake profile was actually a man in the Ivory Coast who then attempted to extort Riley.
It says, wanna try something? And Riley says, sure. And then he gets the bare-chested pic. Riley sent his picture back. Immediately, they write, gotcha, send $3,500 or I'm gonna send this to everyone that you know.
Riley panicked, ended his life just minutes later. His mother says Facebook should have detected and shut down the conversation immediately.
They should have shut it down the minute someone sent inappropriate content to a child. But they didn't. I'm never getting him back, and I know that, but I know he died for something. He died for this. He died for them to stop killing kids. He died for us to be here today, for Mark Zuckerberg to be on the stand.
In the United States, suicide is the second leading cause of death among teenagers, behind gun violence. In response, specialized facilities have works with is Sam, who just turned 17. Last October, his parents insisted he seek help after his social media addiction began taking over his life.
I would isolate in my room for pretty much all day, just comparing myself. To these other people, happy people, rich people. I would see that a lot and it would make me feel. I realized that that was the problem all along. It felt like life again, it felt like me again.
After 4 weeks, I started to notice a significant change of looking in the eye, communicating, you know, like having real conversations.
During workshops like this music class, Sam is rediscovering creativity and connection with others.
We started in Buffalo.
He hopes to return to high school next fall.
Started this like.
Next now to an Antarctic mission that is shining a light into the depths of the waters of the South Pole. Conservation group Under the Pole have been conducting marine research and raising awareness for almost 20 years. They've recently made some stunning discoveries by diving deep under the ice. Olivia Salazar-Winspear takes a closer look.
Cutting across this frozen white expanse, the team from Under the Pole has been aboard their ship for 3 months, crisscrossing the icy waters of Antarctica. They're here to explore what lies below, eager to find out more about life in the depths of the ocean. Diving in polar conditions is not for amateurs. It's a technical and human challenge with no margin for error.
To dive in polar regions, you need to be really motivated, brave, determined. You need the right equipment to protect yourself from the cold, and you need experience.
Weighed down by 50 kilos of equipment, Guylain Barou sets out to explore this unknown world. As they descend, the light begins to fade. The divers are here to get a closer look at a marine animal forest. This teeming world of unexpected abundance and thriving sea life takes their breath away.
I've never seen so much sea life, very, very rarely. It's amazing. The sponges are this big, the Gorgonian coral is huge. They're everywhere. It's beautiful. It's really magical.
The magic continues in the scientist's laboratory on board.
Now that is very strange.
These samples, taken from depths of between 80 and 100 meters, are invaluable to scientists. They prove the existence of marine animal forests in Antarctica.
We've never seen that before.
I'm a diver and a scientist, so it's a double thrill to discover these marine animal forests. For divers, it's the chance to see their beauty, the colors and the presence of these species at those depths. For scientists, of course, it's a validation of the hypothesis of the existence of these habitats, these ecosystems.
But this unique ecosystem is threatened by intensive fishing. That's why Under the Pole is campaigning for the creation of a protected marine area in these waters, where temperatures are rising twice as fast as elsewhere on the planet.
We've got the latest sports news coming up for you now, starting with football and the latest from France's Ligue 1.
Hartstikke druk. You're watching Sky News today with me, Jane Secker. It's 1 o'clock. These are the headlines. The Prime Minister insists the UK won't be drawn into a wider war in the Middle East.
We will keep working towards a swift resolution that brings security and stability back to the region.
President Trump turns up the pressure on allies, insisting that they help police the Strait of Hormuz. Israel begins a grand manoeuvre in Lebanon in a bid to prevent the return of Hezbollah. Also today, a nursery worker who raped and abused young children under his care is jailed for 24 years.
Nathan Bennett is a predatory paedophile who groomed children in order to commit vile sexual crimes on very young victims.
Students at the University of Kent queue for jabs after 2 people die of meningitis. 11 others are seriously ill in hospital. And Oscar success for Jessie Buckley as the Hamlet star becomes the first Irish woman in history to win the prize for Best Actress. Good afternoon. The Prime Minister has insisted the UK won't be dragged into a wider war in the Middle East. He said his priorities were to protect British nationals in the region and to work towards a swift resolution that brings security and stability and stops the Iranian threat to its neighbours. They announced that 92,000 British nationals have returned from the region and laid out plans to provide £53 million to help households whose energy bills will be higher because of the Iran war.
We have been clear and consistent in our objectives throughout this conflict. First, we will protect our people in the region. Second, while taking the necessary action to defend ourselves and our allies, we will not be drawn into the wider war. And third, we will keep working towards a swift resolution that brings security and stability back to the region and stops the Iranian threat to its neighbours. I want to see an end to this war as quickly as possible, because the longer it goes on, the more dangerous the situation becomes, and the worse it is for the cost of living back here at home. We have capped energy bills until the end of June, saving the average household £117. And that's in addition to the Warm Homes discount of £150 for the most vulnerable in society. No matter what happens now in energy markets, in 3 weeks' time, your energy bills will be cut and then capped for the next 3. And I can announce today that we're giving a legal direction to the energy companies to ensure that every penny of the savings that we delivered through last year's budget is passed directly onto customers to keep bills as low as possible.
Well, political editor Beth Rigby has the latest from Downing Street.
There's lots of moving parts to this at the moment as we enter the third week of this war, but I think the first thing to say is that the Prime Minister used this press conference today to do a couple of things. One was to restate his position to the public, his priorities. He set them out 3 priorities. Whether or not the Prime Minister will deploy the Navy, tried to preempt that in his statement where he said that he is working with a collective, working with allies on a collective plan, talking to European allies to come up with some sort of plan to try and offer some sort of assistance in keeping that strait open, but refusing to commit at the moment anything really. Using the Navy, he said it's not easy to say the least, but not commit. Anything. Now, the questions I asked him was, really about more support for people. At home watching this that would be really worried about hundreds of pounds possibly being added to energy bills later this year. And I also asked him about the issue of the Mandelson file. And whether due process was followed in that appointment, and the reason that is that the Prime Minister could come under real fire in the House of Commons over this. It could prove very, very dangerous for him. So I put those 2 questions to him. This is what he had to say. Prime Minister, people are worried sick at the prospect of their energy bills going up by £300 or more after June. The Conservative government back in 2022 capped bills for all households through an energy price cap. It cost about £40 billion. You're not this, are you? Can you just level with people that wealthier households are going to have to
making sure that is held until June. Work we've done on those that heat their homes through oil, which was a real cause of concern, particularly in the tail end of last week when people were beginning to fill up their tanks and they could feel for themselves. And this is an area where, in addition to what we can do through the money we've been putting in today, whether it's that or petrol, I'm absolutely determined to clamp down on anybody who may think of ripping others off in a situation like this. I've heard too many stories of deliveries being cancelled in order for the price to go up. Have to clamp down on that sort of ripping off. But I'm not going to say to you now, because so much is unknown, what we might do in July. We are going to have to do what we can do now to de-escalate, keep this all under review. As soon as it's necessary to say anything further, I will obviously do so. But it's simply not sensible to say that in a number of months' time, not knowing what the situation will be, that the following will be ruled in or ruled out. So that's the approach that we're taking.
Meanwhile, Israel says it's begun a ground manoeuvre in southern Lebanon. It comes after explosions were heard across Beirut early this morning and overnight. Israel's defense minister says the IDF is acting to prevent the return of Hezbollah, which is backed by Iran.
The IDF has begun a ground manoeuvre in Lebanon in order to remove threats and protect the residents of the Galilee and the north. Hundreds of thousands of Shiite residents of southern Lebanon who evacuated and are evacuating their homes from southern Lebanon to Beirut will not return to their homes south of the Litani until the safety of the residents of the north is ensured.
Overnight, President Trump stepped up his rhetoric around the Strait of Hormuz, a crucial shipping route for oil, which Iran has effectively closed with its strikes on ships. The US president has demanded 7 countries, including the UK, help the US secure the strait against Iranian attacks. And more NATO faces a very, very bad future if allies do not come to his aid.
It only takes a couple of people to screw up the strait, a couple of terrorists. You don't need their military is needed, but all you need is a few people dropping mines here and there, and you louse it up. So we need. I would really am demanding that these countries come in and protect their own territory because it is their territory. It's the place from which they get their energy, and they should come and they should help us protect it.
Our security and defence editor, Deborah Haynes, has more.
It will be lost on no one that demand from Donald Trump comes just barely a week after he posted on social media that he didn't want, for example, British aircraft carriers coming to the region to support a war that had already been won. I can't remember his exact turn of phrase, but he was very dismissive of reports that were being reported by us and others that the Prince of Wales, one of our 2 aircraft carriers, was being put on heightened readiness to move as this crisis escalated. Downing Street subsequently played down the idea that the aircraft carrier would be used in the Middle East, but really right now there are clearly lots of options that are being looked at. I think for the UK, the big limiting factor is assets. I mean, you'll remember it took a week for the Royal Navy to be able to ready and deploy one of its Type 45 destroyers, which is now on its way to help defend Cyprus. Decades of defence cuts have, as you've heard me say many, many times, have just simply reduced the capacity of the UK armed forces, in particular the Navy, to be able to deploy force overseas. The UK used to have 4 crewed mine hunters based in Bahrain, as well as 1, if not 2, significant surface combatants, so a destroyer or a frigate, based out of Bahrain, and primarily to help ensure the freedom of navigation around that area. And over the years, the UK and the US and France and other allies, including Gulf states, have worked together at moments of high tension to escort ships through the Strait of Hormuz. So it's something that the Royal Navy understands well. Right now, we haven't heard from the Prime Minister specifics in terms of what could be offered beyond these autonomous minehunter drones that are in Bahrain, but we haven't seen them being used for this kind of operation. It's clearly high risk. The UK would only be doing it with other nations, and we're going to have to wait for details.
Well, flights from Dubai Airport are gradually resuming after a drone attack caused a fire to break out nearby. Authorities say a fuel tank was struck in a drone-related incident which caused the blaze, but that it was contained and nobody was injured. It marks the third incident near Dubai's airport since the war began. The side office covering the conflict from Dubai for us.
We have seen a reduction in the number of missiles and drones being fired at the UAE in recent days, but some are still getting through and they are still hitting critical infrastructure. And Gulf states are also seeing a similar pattern of attacks every day. I would say, though, that the UAE seems to be hardest hit. This is, as you say, the third time the Dubai International Airport has so far been hit in the war. An enormous fire breaking out after a drone hit a fuel tank overnight, and then eyewitnesses reporting that they heard another loud blast around 5 a.m. Now, it's caused a lot of disruption. Of course, this is a major target for Iran because it doesn't just disrupt people here, it disrupts global travel. It's the busiest airport hub in the world, and it seems that Iran is continuing to target this critical domestic infrastructure here in the UAE. There's also been interceptions of missiles over Abu Dhabi today. Reports from the government media office that there's been one casualty, a Palestinian civilian who was, we understand, killed following a falling missile on a civilian vehicle, according to officials here. And then the other major incident today is that the port of Fujairah, which is on the Gulf of Oman in one of the northern Emirates here, that has also been hit again after being hit at the weekend. That is a major hub for shipping, for a refueling point, one of the busiest in the world. But there's also a major pipeline that connects Abu Dhabi's oil fields to Fujairah, allowing the UAE to bypass the Strait of Hormuz. And of course, the Strait of Hormuz remains a real focal point. Donald Trump trying to pull together some sort of international coalition to police the Strait of Hormuz, to get commercial shipping moving again, to allow that flow of oil through this critical choke point for the world's energy. His plans sound ambitious, and at the moment, Australia's come out and said that they're not going to send warships to help with this effort. And if it does come together, it's going to take time, and that impact on the economy is only getting worse. Analysts saying, we could have coped with two weeks of this disruption. It would have been painful, but we could have managed. But beyond that, it's sort of worst case scenario for many analysts who study this situation and who've already looked into the impact that this could have on the global economy. And I should say, Donald Trump seems to talk up how things are going, the fact that Iran has been weakened, that they've hammered their military facilities and the Navy, yet we are still seeing Iran successfully target critical domestic infrastructure here in the UAE, and they're also keeping commercial shipping at a standstill. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens in this third week of the war that we're now in. But certainly at the moment, very little's changed here on the ground.
Sally Lock with that. You're watching Sky News Today. Coming up, students are queuing for vaccinations as a meningitis outbreak kills 2 in Kent.
Aan tafel! Telefoon even weg, schat. Ja, als ouder is het echt niet altijd even makkelijk. Zot de hond toch hartstikke dik. Maar gelukkig ontmoet je elkaar echt even. Ja, maar het is ook een snackenrussel. Tussen 6 en 7. Probeer nu de nieuwe bakplaatmaaltijden van Honig. Hoe was jullie dag?
2 people have died and 11 are reportedly seriously ill in hospital after an outbreak of a rare form of meningitis in the Canterbury area. Students at the University of Kent, where one student died, have been queuing for antibiotics at the campus as a precautionary measure. Meningitis is an infection of the protective membranes that surround the brain and spinal cord and requires urgent medical attention. Symptoms include a high temperature, vomiting and a stiff neck, but doctors have warned that many characteristics of a hangover can also be present. Infections that cause meningitis can be spread through coughing, sneezing or kissing. Bacterial meningitis can be fatal and leave people with hearing or vision loss, seizures and requiring their limbs to be amputated. Whereas viral meningitis often clears on its own without the need for treatment. Our correspondent Emma Birchley is in Canterbury for us. Emma, this is just an awful story, isn't it? 2 young people who died very, very swiftly after contracting this.
Yes, I mean, this is incredibly serious and, of course, of immense concern. I'm at Club Chemistry, which is where many of the people who've fallen ill were on a night out now, not this weekend just gone, but the weekend before. And actually, the owners made a decision not to open for now, not because the UK Health Security Agency has said she must close, but because of her worry as a mum. Now, we're talking here about invasive meningococcal disease. So this is the bacterial version of meningitis. That disease can also cause septicemia, which is commonly known as blood poisoning. The problem with these is that the onset is rapid and it can cause serious illness. 11 people are seriously ill in hospital, but it can also cause death. So we know that 2 young people have lost their lives, the University of Kent confirming that one of their students, as yet unnamed, has very sadly died, but also a 6th form student. This, a girl called Juliet, that's all we know her as, in year 13, so she'll be 17 or 18, at the Queen Elizabeth Grammar School, has very sadly lost her life. Her head teacher, Amelia McElroy, has been paying tribute today.
It is with great sadness that we are confirming the loss of Juliet, a much loved and treasured member of our school community. Juliet was a student at our school for 7 years. She was incredibly kind, thoughtful and intelligent, and she loved our school. She was really very happy here. Juliet embraced everything that school had to offer with great enthusiasm and joy, and her humour and her positivity were captivating. She was a genuinely caring and attentive listener, a true friend who listened with warmth, respect and sincere interest to her peers and to our staff. In short, she was a lovely girl. Her beautiful smile, her loving nature and her sense of fun will be hugely missed. We are all completely devastated.
Well, close contacts of anyone known to have meningitis have been told to get antibiotics, but at the university this morning, from 9 o'clock, there has been a long queue. In fact, it formed long before that. Hundreds of people snaking through the campus, queuing up to get antibiotics. Now, many of them were students, but certainly not all of them. There were parents there with their school children. There were members of the broader community who'd come, having phoned 111, or with someone they knew that was poorly, who felt that they needed to get antibiotics. And when they came out, it was with a single tablet of ciprofloxacin to take an antibiotic to make sure that they don't then come down with meningitis. This is what some of the people in that queue told me earlier.
It's really concerning. I mean, yesterday I was with all of my housemates and we were just looking at the news coming through and we were like, oh, it's actually real, it's serious. And I've got exams this week, so I'm very on edge about what happens to those as well.
Considering that I'm not a student here, my sister's not a student here, we haven't been in any contact with anybody here, and she's gone in with suspected meningitis, I would say it's probably quite concerning, to be honest, because we only know about this, but what if there's potentially other places around the country where there's also an outbreak of a similar thing?
Do you say, has she gone in? Has she gone
She's in hospital, yeah.
It's just not worth the risk spreading it even more with the amount of chaos it's already caused in about a day.
because we weren't actually informed until about last night. A lot of students weren't informed till hours later.
So part of the problem is that the symptoms can be like a cold or flu, or indeed a hangover, so headaches, feeling sick, dizziness, confusion as well, but also not liking bright lights. And we always hear, don't we, with meningitis about the rash, that if you roll a glass over it, those red spots don't disappear. But those spots are a sign that it is pre-advanced, and the advice is very clear. If you have any concerns, and if you're unwell or a friend is, it's to make sure you keep checking on them, but call 999 or go to A&E if you think it's necessary, because it could well save someone's life.
Thank you very much, Emma. Now let's go look at the weather.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me about travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather. It was getting warmer and more settled this week, but staying windy for a day or so with rain in places. Today temperatures look close to the average, but it'll be windy, especially around western coast. Eastern Britain and the West Country will be mainly dry into the middle of the afternoon, but it'll be cloudy elsewhere with outbreaks of rain or drizzle prolonged over northwestern Britain. That more general rain will push across the northeast later, becoming locally heavy over northwestern Scotland and bringing some mountain snow.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News weather.
You're watching Sky News today. Coming up, who can safeguard the Strait of Hormuz? We will discuss next.
En we hebben een prototype klaar. Indrukwekkend. Kan ik dat vanavond nog zien? Ja! Taxi nodig?
Jullie willen een goede indruk maken.
Met de 100% elektrische Toyota CHR Plus ben je klaar voor het echte werk.
players during Roman Abramovich's ownership. So just to recap that breaking news that we got in the last few minutes, the Premier League has fined Chelsea a record £10.75 million after it reached sanctions agreements with the club over disclosed payments relating to players during Roman Abramovich's ownership. We'll bring you more on that as we get it. Now, Sir Keir Starmer says he won't let the UK be drawn into a wider war in Iran, but acknowledged that opening up the Strait of Hormuz is key to bringing down the cost of living. Earlier, he said that the UK is working with other countries on a plan to secure the strait, and of course it comes after President Trump demanded America's allies pull their weight. Well, let's talk now to retired Navy Commander Tom Sharp. Tom, very good to get your thoughts today. Just remind us, how risky is it in the Straits of Hormuz at the moment? What is happening there?
It's very high risk in sort of all the war-fighting domains that you can have. There's an air threat, which is the drones and the missiles that we've seen across the wider conflict. They're still being fired. There's a surface threat, thousands of fast attack craft and uncrewed surface vessels. And then there's the subsurface threat, which is mini submarines and mine layers. And we've seen bits of probably the air threat. We haven't seen too much of the others. So even though Iran is getting an absolute pounding down there from both the US and Israel, they still have a couple of levers in their armory to play, and it's a difficult operating environment to start with. So yes, it's high risk.
So what military capability does the US have there?
It has, first and foremost, the USS Abraham Lincoln task group. So a Nimitz-class aircraft carrier, 90,000 tons, lots and lots of fast jet aircraft, and then about 8 warships, destroyer warships, the Arleigh Burke destroyers, of which at any one time 2 or 3 are allocated to protecting the carrier. But the ones that aren't could become essential in weeks to come when it comes to escorting ships through. And likewise, the USS Gerald R. Ford, slightly bigger, newer carrier in the Red Sea, she has a group of warships with her as well. And if we see them flowing through the Red Sea and through the Gulf of Oman, it's going to take pretty much all of them, I think, to start escorting safely through all those threats that I outlined a second ago.
I mean, and is that a feasible option, that they form a kind of escort to take the ships through?
It is feasible. Escorting is as old as navies. It's very much doable, but it does depend on writing down those threats that I've outlined to an acceptable level. And the problem is, as commentators, it's very hard to know what that level is. We don't know what's been hit. All we know is that Iran is still firing, and like the Houthis in the Red Sea, who of course learned everything from Iran, they know that they can escalation manage this and just keep a steady drumbeat of activity, a steady drumbeat of drone strikes. They don't even need to be very good or talk about mines, and the effect is the same. You've effectively stopped shipping, and now of course we see Tehran pulling levers all around the world saying, if you don't side with America, we can let your ships through. So this has a way to go. But to your point about the feasibility of escorting, it is. It's just risky and it's resource heavy.
So we have the secret drumbeat. We have the threat of mines being laid by Iran. How difficult is it to know what exactly they have in that area?
Well, we have a rough idea of what they had. Certainly when it comes to mines, they've got over 5,000 of these things, and a lot of them look like World War II vintage horned mines, contact mines, where you literally hit it and it blows a hole in your hull. But very cheap, and they've got thousands and thousands. And then they've got some quite sophisticated Russian and Chinese mines that will count ships going overhead and perhaps determine their displacement and make a choice as to whether to deploy or not. So from very crude to quite sophisticated. And it's really hard to know for sure which of these have been used yet. My bet at the moment is not many. I think we're seeing a lot of circular reporting about the potential use of mines rather than actual evidence of them having been used. Certainly there have been no mine strikes. But the problem is, if there are mines, even if there's a suggestion that there are mines, you have to go in and clear those before you could do any of that escorting difficulty that I described before. So you're adding time and again sustainability whilst putting those mine clearance assets right in the eye of the storm in order to ensure the strait is clear of mines.
Because I suppose we should remember that it's not just the threat to human life in terms of an explosion on the ship, but it's also the impact of if a mine was to hit an oil tanker, the environmental impact on that region would be huge, wouldn't it? The UK is talking with its EU partners about what it can do to help secure the strait. What do you think we should be doing? What do you think we should be sending?
Well, I think we should be sending everything we have. The idea that this is a problem that someone else's, I know it was created by someone else. Okay, fine. Actually, you track Iran's behaviour over the last few decades. It is, in my mind, having been very close to them, it's pretty easy to see where this all started. But nevertheless, we are now, as a country, and the EU bloc in general, wrestling with what level of involvement we want in this, which I think is a bit of a mistake because we are involved. This is, whether we want it or not, this is our fight, and it's affecting prices now, and that could get a lot worse. So in my view, others are available, but my view is if we have assets that can help with this fight in the Strait of Hormuz, then we should send them there. It's an immediate and existential threat to the UK, whether we like it or not.
Tom Shelf, all views are available. It's good to get as many as possible. Good to talk to you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, we've heard from the Iranian foreign minister in response to President Trump's call for assistance in the Strait of Hormuz.
They are asking other countries to come and assist them so that the Strait of Hormuz remains open. Of course, from our perspective, it is open. It's only close to our enemies, to the... those who carried out unjust aggression against our country and to their allies.
Well, let's bring in the journalist and author of The Heartbeat of Iran, Tara Kangalu. So, Dara, the Iranian foreign minister claiming that the strait is open?
Yes, but to our friends, not our enemies. And also, I found very interesting how he made light of the President of the United States, essentially saying, now we're at a point that Iran is claiming victory, all the while U.S. President Donald Trump is looking to support elsewhere. That, of course, he's alluding to the president's call for NATO allies to come and, be active in this effort to escort ships through the strait. And so when you listen, to the foreign minister of Iran's remarks, you can sense this hubris, this remarks that essentially is projecting this idea of resistance and that the Iranian regime is somehow winning. And speaking with sources,
Let's bring our sports correspondent and the details of what this is about.
Well, this is a wide-ranging case that we've been looking into. Vast wrongdoing during the Roman ownership period between particularly 2011 and 2018. Now, this all involves the new ownership of 2022, a sale that took place after enforced sale at the Roman sanction. And it led to them uncovering various financial payments from the Abramovich era. Now, Chelsea have been fined £10.75 million. They reached an agreement with the Premier League. It's a record fine, but they handed over this information. And it's about illicit payments to players, to agents, to third parties, as well as irregularities over dealings with the academy. And some of the details we're getting from the case, there were payments totaling £47.5 million made by third parties to players, individuals, or corporate entities in 2011 and 2018, including £23 million plus to unregistered agents. Now, this is in connection with deals for 7 players many will know well, Hazard, Madden, and so many others involved in this. There is a £10.75 million fine, a record fine, and there was already £150 million set aside from the £2.5 billion sale of the club to deal with any outstanding issues that would be uncovered, because Chelsea have already been fined €10 million by UEFA relating to parts of this case. There's also an ongoing FA investigation to 74 charges that Chelsea are facing over this. It is a vast case, but Chelsea did cooperate. The current ownership of Todd Bowley and Clearlake Capital in handing over this information, which meant it wasn't a drawn-out case. It was a settlement that they were part of a sanctioning agreement, and it is pretty vast, a period of great success. Some will be asking, how have the Premier League managed to conclude this case when the outstanding Manchester City investigation is still ongoing? We had that hearing, it finished well over a year ago, relating to 130 charges of financial wrongdoing that is alleged denied by City. Well, in part, Chelsea reached this agreement for the handing over of the information. Also, the Premier League says that Chelsea would not have breached their corporate sustainability rules had the payments been made correctly. So, basically, the accusation is now being established that these were off-book payments. They should have been made by the club, they'll be made by third parties. Now, if they had been made by the club, the Premier League is saying that they would not have reached the threshold for unsuspended. So we are then relating to breach the whole thing, which could lead to that. Someone will be asking why no full production that other clubs have failed justifying, but pretty extensive, and we have this record fine now, also a 1-year transfer ban, but that is suspended for 2 years.
Nursery worker Nathan Bennett has been sentenced to 24 years in prison for raping young boys in his care at a now defunct nursery. Following the sentence, we heard from Detective Inspector Lucy Ford, who led the case.
Nathan Bennett is a predator. Paedophile who groomed children in order to commit vile sexual crimes on very young victims. He manipulated his way into a position of trust, which has given him access to victims and admit to carrying out the most serious sexual offences, he extended the trauma of those families by putting them through a trial, in which a substantial amount of distressing evidence was read out to the court and the jury. I hope that now Bennett has been handed a lengthy 30-year sentence, the victims and their families will finally be able to rebuild their lives.
Our West of England correspondent Dan Whitehead has the latest from outside Bristol Crown Court.
Yeah, I mean, such a horrific case there. There's a trial back in February which was opened by the prosecution and described as every parent's nightmare. We're talking about 5 boys aged 2 and 3 who were at the centre of this case. As you say, Nathan Bennett began working at the Department of Interim Nursery in July 2024. Concerns were raised by staff and parents in February 2025. And his arrest followed the manager of the nursery reviewing CCTV footage of Bennett with his hands placed down the trousers of one of those children. He was subsequently arrested. That nursery was closed in December last year, but we heard...
bad thing done. At the same time, we look at it from your own religious view, and at the same time from your own background about who a woman is. That really tells us maybe when you beat a woman, you feel bad about it or you feel good, but it's something very bad.
Trace, a woman is just like us. So the moment you start raising your hand to beat a woman, definitely you are insulting yourself, because that's what they call gender equality. Although I'm not a pro-feminist, but I just believe in equality of rights, equality of duties, and equality of gender.
Indeed, we need to incorporate men, and men also said it, it's not right to beat a woman, so do not raise your hand on a woman, especially if you're a man. But Fatu, I mean, we come from societies that have always, like I said before, matriarchal, matrilineal. Women were involved in, decision making, representation. For example, if you look at the Asante Kingdom, queen mothers were there making choices about, what is happening in the courts, what is happening with regards to abuse and all of these things. We had Queen Zinga as well. Yeah.
I mean, those are very great examples, but it's just the way that life is supposed to be. I mean, someone mentioned it, culture, religion, and it does not mean that women hate men. It is saying that women's problems are very specific, and we need to look at it from a feminist lens so that the equality can be sustainable. So I think those are things we always
we always have to joke around and say, there's African countries obviously that are doing well. Fatu always likes to reference some country that we know, but I thought, there's African countries that are doing well, and Namibia is doing something different. We can do it, and yes, Namibia did.
From electing its first woman president to woman holding nearly half the seats in the National Assembly in Namibia, women literally rule. In fact, it's the only African country to rank in the top 10 of the World Economic Forum Global Gender Gap Report. States large into its deliberate inclusive leadership strategy. But how did Namibia get here? On March 21st, 2025, Namibia made history by inaugurating all women in its top leadership positions. Ntumanani Daitwa as its first woman president. Lucia Wetboy was appointed vice president, and Sarah Kumugwela Amadila became the first woman to lead parliament. According to stats from UN Women, Namibia's National Assembly includes 44 women out of 104 members. That's 42.3% representation, and young women are also represented. Information Minister Emma Willis was first appointed at age 23 as Deputy Minister, while 32-year-old Esperance Luviando now serves as Health Minister. But these wins didn't happen overnight. In 2014, Namibia introduced
The zebra system, a bold 50-50 gender policy adopted by the ruling party SWAPO. It requires alternating male and female candidates on party lists and leadership structures. In simple terms, it means if the woman is a minister, the man is the deputy, and vice versa, a built-in balance. At the time, analysts noted that as women gain power, they're better placed to compete for positions that are traditionally dominated by men, because political and economic incentives shifts when representation shifts. Funny how that works. But despite this progress, challenges still remain. Out of 42 newly sworn in National Council members, only 7 are women. It's a slight improvement of only 14% in the previous House. Representation at regional and constituency levels still lags behind. But beyond politics, there are still gaps in unpaid care and domestic work, as well as key labor market indicators such as gender pay gap and ICT skills, among others.
Tragic happens, women are always the ones who are taking the toll.
Yeah, it's a question of survival, and we've seen it. When women are empowered, when they're educated, they make better decisions. Good. So now you will communicate instead of instilling fear and fighting.
Yes, I can change.
I think that's a good thing that we do. Yeah, I mean, in the end, if we're able to educate just one man, I think sometimes it's about education as well. But the question is whether people are willing to change.
And in the end, violence can never be justice.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as an eye for an eye, as people did say. And also, please, if you've experienced gender-based violence, seek help and also seek therapy.
Yeah, we should be more compassionate. The world is really going through a lot right now, and the last thing we want is families breaking, partners breaking up just because of lack of communication or because one person feels they have more power over the other. So please, let's continue this conversation on all our social media platforms. We are on YouTube, as you can see, but follow us also on TikTok, on Instagram, so that we can hear your take on this topic like we like to do.
Exactly.
So we've come to the end.
Now.
Do it right now.
Yeah.
We've come to the end of the show. My name is Fatu Elika Miloshi.
And I am Rachel Ngozi. Until next time.
Bye-bye.
desperately trying to tell us.
Their calm is deceptive. Their fury shapes entire continents. They form the bedrock of our existence. They bear our burden and the weight of our greed. It's time to hear the stories of the stones, whispers of the earth. In 15 minutes. Climate change is heating up the world. Everywhere? Not quite. Europe could deep freeze. Melting polar ice and a change in ocean currents could have dramatic effects, as climate researchers warn. Global warming, European ice age. Global us. In 90 minutes. Sudan's civil war, the world's biggest humanitarian crisis.
I can't do anything. There are no solutions. There is no money.
Aid organizations are at their breaking point. Because right now, powerful donor countries are cutting more and more funding.
Without assistance here, for sure all these people will be migrating to Europe.
Sudan's civil war, the limits of humanitarian aid. Starts April 11th on DW. Why don't hummingbirds get drunk? What causes gravitational waves to squeeze our bodies? How much water do we need per day? Do plants scream for help when they're stressed out? And how can you treat bug bites? Find the answers. Get smart on DW Science, our TikTok channel. What happens to societies where women remain invisible? They lose ideas, power, a part of their future. We showcase the daily victories of women, brave, honest.
There, about a fifth of global oil and liquefied natural gas passes through the strait. Israel says it has sent troops into Lebanon for what it calls a limited and targeted operation to protect border communities from Hezbollah attacks. The Israeli military had previously ramped up troop presence on the ground in southern Lebanon and carried out extensive airstrikes across the country. More than 800,000 people have been displaced over the past weeks. One of the world's busiest air travel hubs, Dubai International Airport, has been reopened after a drone strike forced it to suspend flight operations. Smoke billowing from a burning fuel depot in the vicinity of the airport could be seen from kilometers away. Flight operations in the region have been heavily disrupted since the onset of the US-Israeli war against Iran.
Think you know geopolitics? War, power, strategy, the same old voices keep telling the same old stories.
What if everything you thought you knew was wrong?
Hi, I'm Shani Rosanes.
Hi, I'm Raslat Nazimi. We'd like to invite you to Global Eyes,
the podcast that rewrites the playbook on geopolitics.
Bold, fresh, and fearless conversations.
With critical thinkers who challenge it all.
Global Eyes, a different
Aquacultura K4 ondersteunt de spijsvertering en is verfrissend tintelend. Give your gut more.
Donald Trump is pushing for allies in the war against Iran, urging nations to send warships to secure the Strait of Hormuz. Now, the UK and France have sent some military to the region to protect countries being attacked by Iran, but they are not escorting commercial vessels through the strait. Meanwhile, Tehran says its fight is only with the US and Israel, and nations hosting what it calls hostile forces.
Little or no movement on the Strait of Hormuz for another day, as Iranian strikes whiz across the Gulf region. But the US wants to unblock the route with some help from their friends. Writing on Truth Social, Donald Trump said countries of the world that receive oil through the Hormuz Strait must take care of that passage, and we will help a lot. The US will also coordinate with those countries so that everything goes quickly, smoothly, and well. This should have always been a team effort, and now it will be. But Washington's allies aren't convinced and have shown no willingness to sign up to help the US and Israel in their war on Iran. The UK and France have sent military to the Middle East, but have stressed they are not taking part in the war. Both London and Paris remain critical of the conflict, and Iran remains defiant, making it clear whose ships can safely pass through the narrow waterway connecting the Persian Gulf with the rest of the world. Speaking to US media, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said the key transport route in the Persian Gulf remained open for international shipping, except for vessels belonging to the United States, Israel, and their allies. So with Tehran drawing a hard line on who gets passage and Washington struggling to garner support, the rest of the world looks on with growing fear this conflict could spiral out of control and push prices up even further.
Right, so for more on this, let's bring in Alex Otanka. He is the founding director of the Iran program at the Middle East Institute in Washington, D.C. Hello, Alex. Thanks for your time. So Washington wants its allies to help secure shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. What could be the consequences of that?
It's great to be with you. But look, it's too early to say because we have a couple of things to point out here. One is the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi was just why I think he's being selective, and they don't want to be seen as indiscriminate in terms of how they're closing the strait.
Right. Right. So if there is no support from allies, can the US and Israel fight this war alone or defend the Strait of Hormuz alone?
So look, there's no sign that US and Israel went into this war banking on support from allies, the Europeans or anybody else. The question is why didn't plan for this more carefully before they actually attacked Iran, and that's something that's been debated as of right now. But I'll just point out historically. Coalitions that have worked either in the Persian Gulf or in the Arabian Sea, places like Bab al-Mandeb when the Houthis were striking maritime traffic in the Red Sea. historically those coalitions have not really been that effective in But in terms of if they could get more, some of the rhetoric coming from Tehran suggests that what they want is a new Middle East going forward. And I think that's when they're engaging in more fantasy than reality. I mean, some of the points we've heard, sort of concepts such as United States military bases having to leave the region, neighboring states like the Gulf countries need to kick out American militaries. Again, this is more like wishful thinking as opposed to serious thinking on the part of Tehran, but that's at least what their rhetoric is suggesting. But again, it's important to underscore, surviving as a regime would be a strategic victory for the Islamic Republic, no doubt about it.
Right. And, you know, you've been in touch with a lot of people on the ground, you're experts on the ground. How is this war being received or perceived inside the country?
So, as you can imagine, the Iranians are going through a roller coaster emotions. On the one hand, the majority of Iranians do not like the Islamic Republic, but there has been a hope that any kind of foreign military intervention would result in a quick victory, if you will, in the fall of the regime. Clearly, that has not happened, and I would also say clearly that's unlikely to happen in the short term. It could. Happen in the medium to long term, but in the next few days and weeks, the regime will be standing. So, and now Iranians. Some people, light at the end of the tunnel is regime change. For other people, light at the end of the tunnel is a quick ceasefire tomorrow so we can go back to normality. So that's very much a subjective issue. But I think most likely what we can expect is this war will continue for at least a few more weeks. I think where we are right now, the President of the United States is the most important figure who has to make a decision, together with the Prime Minister of Israel, Bibi Netanyahu. And we know the Israelis want regime change. The question is, and the Israelis convince Trump to stay in this war for more than a week, perhaps months. That's the big question that we need to wait for and see the answer to.
Right.
Ja, dan komt hier de buitenkeuken. Oh ja. En dan komt daar de schutting.
Zou eindelijk wat om die dode tuin doen. Eens kijken naar die offerte.
En ik kom daar toch.
Hallo, gaat hij over niet een paleistuin aanleggen of zo? Maar, ik schrijf het wel even op. Zelf doen.
Zelf doen. Nou, we kunnen ook gewoon naar de gamma.
Dat zeg ik. Bij Gamma vind je alles voor je tuin.
Nou, die ouders van jou zijn lekker bezig.
Nou, in principe waren ze net bijna failliet. Je droomtuin, doe het lekker zelf. Dat zeg ik.
Amsterdam, a hospital in the shadow of war. Watch now on YouTube.
I am the rainforest. I watched them grow up here. They've left, but they always come back. Yes, they always come. Well, they do breathe air, and I make air. Have they thought about that? Humans, so smart. They'll figure it out. Humans making air. That'll be fun to